and one of our favorite guests. And I honestly think one of just the most cerebral, logical thinkers out there. Love reading everything you write. Before we get started, let's go thank our sponsors. First of all, Marco at Independence Arc, who just had a baby yesterday. Congratulations, Marco. We always complain about big food conglomerates taking over the food supply. There is something we can do about it, and that's to patronize small independent operators. Independence Arc Farms and our buddy Marco. Please look them up. Please give them a shot. Also, American Gold Exchange, Dana Samuelson. It is probably time to own physical gold, and we will hit on that in the show. Dana Samuelson's the guy. And unfilteredinvestor.com, where Bobby and I are 2/3 of it, but the real star is Mike Arnold, his technical analysis. Jeffrey Tucker, how are you?
Everything's going well. I just dropped my mouse. That's why I had to jump away there. Yeah.
But last time you were on, it's 2 times ago, you taught us how to tie a bow tie, which I didn't really get. I've watched a couple of YouTube videos, and I just think just seems too damn complicated. When did you start wearing bow ties, and what were you trying to stand out, or you just thought it was a cool look?
No. I was working in the clothing business. We got when I was young, I was like in high school, and we got a big shipment of bow ties in, and I asked the boss if I could wear one instead of a regular tie. He said, "Well, sure." And so a guy in the store taught me how to tie it. And the thing that I noticed when I went to lunch that day, I think I went to Chick-fil-A, and I ordered a bowl of chicken soup, and I thought, "This is amazing. I can eat this soup
Oh
without
my
worrying about my
God.
tie
Yeah.
This is what I
dropping
mean about
in."
his brain. I would have never thought about that.
It's amazing.
You know?
Less
And so I
spaghetti
thought this
sauce
is
on the tie, right?
yeah, so I thought this is incredible. So then I just started wearing it, and I never stopped. And there was a couple of years ago I thought, well, yeah, I'm gonna become a normal person to wear, just like a regular tie. And I showed up to like a party, and people were just outraged. They said, this doesn't look anything like you. What's happened? This is a disaster. It's like when a famous Hollywood actress emerges from her newest, surgery, facial surgery or whatever. So people were just appalled. Fortunately, I had a bow tie in my pocket, so I went
Thank
to the
God.
men's room and changed and came back. And so that was my one recent experiment with trying to change. So this is the problem when you wear a bow tie, you just get stuck with him forever.
Mhm.
Tucker Carlson actually migrated out of it.
Oh, I
Not
remember
entirely.
I
when he
do
was a bow tie
remember
guy.
him wearing
Yeah.
them, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's what the funny thing about that story is that when he was an intern at Heritage Foundation, I was working in DC. Um, I I I visited him because he was editing an article of mine, and he said, "Hey, that bow tie looks really great. Where'd you get it?" And I told him. Well, next thing you know, he pops up in a bow tie, right? So yeah,
And if
there's
we know
the
Tucker
hidden
Carlson,
history.
he probably claimed it as his own idea, never gave you any credit at all. Okay,
Hey, I don't
I'm
know if he
trying to be a
remembers that
fedora
or not.
guy. What do you think the likelihood that I could eventually pull off being a fedora guy?
You can be a fedora guy, but the great problem with hats for men today is that we don't have much occasion to wear them because you can't actually wear them indoors. Well, you can wear them in a hotel lobby, but you can't wear them in a dining room,
That's a great
and
point.
you can't wear them in somebody's house, and you can't really wear them even in a conference room.
Right, and then all you have is
So there's
flat
really
hair.
no place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now people used to in the old days wear hats when you would ride in a carriage because you need one, but now we don't need that when we're in the car, right? So there's just not much for the occasion, and the problem I tell you what the real problem is because you can imagine yourself with a hat and that sort of thing. The problem is you have a tendency to forget it, right?
Yeah,
So
no
let's
doubt
say
about
you go
that.
to you go to the movie theater or something, and you probably wear a hat in the theater. You take it off in the theater, set it down the seat next to you. There's a 50-50 chance you're just going to walk away. And I go through hats so quickly now for that very reason. I'll go into and restaurants don't have hat racks, and there's nobody there to say, "Oh, please, sir, don't forget your hat." So, I end up leaving my hats everywhere. So I keep
Flawed,
having to
yeah.
buy new hats, which gets expensive. So after a while, you think, "Ah, to hell with the hat," you know?
Are we lost, Jeffrey, in that whole thing? We'll get to real stuff soon, everybody. I'm positive we will.
But I'll
But
tell you another funny thing is
I
is
just
there's
had a
so there's
45-minute conversation with my brother because my brother owns a couple of restaurants. And he said that it just drives him crazy to see adult men come into the restaurant with a baseball cap on. And
it
I
drives
don't
me
mind a
it drives me
baseball cap
insane.
here and there,
Yeah.
but it's not a fedora for sure.
No, it really troubles me, and I don't it's fine you wear a baseball cap, don't wear it inside the restaurant, and I've always had this problem. I only one time did I manage to figure out how to deal with this problem, which was a gentleman came into a cocktail party I was running, and uh, and it was rather large, and he was wearing the living room, and I found I just couldn't stand it, so I just got up and said, "I am so sorry that no one took your hat when you came in the door."
That's genius.
So
That's
so I
genius.
gave him a little bit of an out, but that's only worked one time. Most of the time, I just sit and seethe.
Okay, so people who turned in, this isn't going to be an entire episode on fashion. As a matter of fact, we're going to pivot right now to something a little bit more substantive, something that I think is obviously the most pressing issue. Jeffrey, based on your tweets and your writings, it seems to me that you think that this Iranian situation is a massive unforced error, misstep by the administration that's going to have lasting ramifications. Can you, if I'm characterizing your opinion correctly, can you elaborate on that?
I wish that weren't true, but it seems like it is true. I think maybe
I agree.
Trump was led to believe this is going to be like a Venezuela situation. He didn't understand the Iranian regime. He thought it was that you kill the Ayatollah and you're done. And got tired of the insults from the Ayatollah. Let's get rid of that guy, and the whole society will collapse. The U.S. will take over. Um, Trump sort of believes he's got this Midas touch. I hesitate to talk like this because I don't want to mischaracterize him, and uh, I want to believe the best about him. I really do. But but all evidence that I'm seeing right now is that something's a little bit broken there. And now I did a deep study of this guy during the early COVID period. Again, that was sounded disrespectful, this guy. But the point is, in the early COVID period, he got trolled by advisors who came to him and said, "Listen, Xi Jinping got rid of this virus just by locking everybody down. If he can do that, you can do that too. You're surely as great as he is." And he bought into it, right? And bought into the metric that the goal was to minimize the number of cases. So he bought into that. Next thing you know, he destroyed his own economic accomplishments, and marred his whole first term with this ridiculous absurdity. Well, I'm afraid something very similar went on with this Iran situation. That he got surrounded by people who said, "Look what you did in Venezuela. Everybody doubted you. You achieved the great thing. You can do the same thing for Iran, the world's leading exporter of terrorism. Uh, uh, Nobody else has been able to achieve this. Carter was too much of a coward. You've brought America back. We're living in the golden age. Now's the time to strike." And he did. And the third day after, it seemed like whatever he believed was going to happen wasn't happening. I began to notice he had a new posture in his interviews. He just didn't want to talk about it. He wanted to change the subject. He wanted to talk about his ballroom and the curtains and that sort of thing. Well, this gave. I thought this was spooky because this same exact situation happened after about the first 6 weeks of lockdown and COVID. He didn't want to talk about it anymore. He just thought that if he lost interest in the subject, that everybody else should also, and that was it. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm having to get up, chase
No,
my
it's
dog
quite-
away from the courts, and that's what I recognize in these press conferences he's giving. He doesn't think anybody ought to be talking about this war anymore. And he's like, "Oh, we got it all under control. It's fine." It's the same thing he was with COVID, and and he was actually really happy about the BLM riots back in the day because it allowed him to change the subject away from COVID, right? And then, but then after the BLM riots ended, suddenly COVID was a thing again. He finally invited Scott Atlas to the White House, who gave him a talking to about viruses and epidemiology, and he kind of shaped up. But then once he had solved the problem in his own mind and just realized he had made a huge mistake, again, he just wanted to change the subject. And as we went into the election in November 2020, he talked about everything but the obvious catastrophe that had become of the jobs market and the capital markets and everybody's trauma from the whole thing. And I'm afraid he's doing that same thing right now. It just seems for all the world like he's just ignoring things, but he's not. Again, the analogy to COVID works here because we're now seeing gas prices that are higher than they have been in 18 months, certainly higher than they were when he took office. This has been one of his top talking points, was how great it is that, how much he did for the gas price, right? So suddenly that is gone, just
Yeah.
disappeared. And oil just bumped up to $93 a barrel. So his drill, baby, drill. We're going to drive down energy prices, and that's going to push inflation down, and so on. His and the repeal of the Green New Deal and everything. So much of that entire thing was about cheap energy,
Yeah.
and just in an instant, the entire thing is wiped out.
So,
And
so can I interject real quick? And I want to say the people are watching too, and we voted for Trump. I voted for Trump. If the election was tomorrow, Trump against Kamala Harris, 1,000 out of 1,000 times I'd vote for Trump without hesitation. If the Democrats were serious about getting a candidate and getting an actual policy initiative that wasn't about just I hate Trump, then I wouldn't have voted for Trump, perhaps. But we are going to always look at every policy with a very critical eye. That's what we do. I apologize if it hurts any of your feelings. Jeffrey, is there a way that he can make this right? Is there a time? Are the sands slipping through the hourglass? If this is somewhat settled in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, is he righting the ship again?
I don't know, the killing of the Pope of the Shia Muslim world was not a smart idea if you wanted to just end this really, really quickly. I mean, that was quite a shocking thing to do. And now the war is spreading. We've got major economic problems brewing with, ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz, unable to get a proper level of insurance even to allow them to pass. Growing numbers of states involved. There's a lot of damage here, and it seems like Trump is not the kind of person, as we saw during COVID again, who can just recognize that he had made a mistake and walk away from it, right? I mean, he just has never acknowledged those mistakes, even though everybody knows it, everybody around him knows it, and he probably at some level knows it. In this case, does he know he made a mistake? I don't know. It's hard to take him apart psychologically, but as a businessman, one of the number one thing, businessmen on his level, any admission of wrongdoing or having made a mistake leads to a diminution of your credit standing, and which is the worst thing you can do if you're building a business based on leverage. You need lots of credit and the best possible credit terms. So that means never admitting an error, any more than you would go to your app on your bank app and dial back your credit rating. You would never do that, right? So this is the way Trump thinks. Admitting error is to diminish your standing with credit rating agencies and with the public in general. So he'll never do it. And I see that most recently he's talking about unconditional surrender with Iran, which I can't even imagine who told him that this was a good thing to say. Like, the best thing he could possibly do right now is figure out some way to negotiate and come up with some solution, and then telling the world that whoever the next leader of Iran is, he has to be able to approve that person. I can't believe that he would say these kinds of things. I mean, this is either he's getting he has some apocalyptic advisors around him that have gotten to him in some way, or he's just not thinking very clearly. But what I'm seeing right now, listen, I wish this weren't true. There's such promise in this administration. I mean, after the first 40 days, I was writing, hagiographic articles about, all the great things that the Trump administration was doing. I mean, it was overwhelming. It was thrilling, between the Doge cuts and the cleaning up of the bureaucracies and the invitation to all the bureaucrats to resign and the repeal of DEI and the new measures for free speech. It was just, I listed all these wonderful things he had done. And here we are all these months later, and it seems like a lot of this is just draining away. And we've got macroeconomic problems now. I mean, we've got problems developing in the credit sector. We saw BlackRock, today with stopping withdrawals, which is an amazing thing to do. But the thing that really shocked me this morning was the jobs report. Now, I don't know if you've had a chance to look through it,
I have.
but look at that chart labeled B1, which shows you sector by sector the health of the jobs market. And if these numbers are right, um, this is not a small problem. This is not one sector, one kind of good or service. One there's not this is economy wide. I mean, what you see is job losses in every single retail sector, every wholesale sector, in hospitality, which I can't even believe. I always thought there would be jobs available for people willing to change sheets, or or serve serve your hors d'oeuvres or whatever. But now they're shedding jobs like crazy. That's a really bad sign. It's in manufacturing. I mean, manufacturing seems to be falling at a growing pace of decline, and uh, you can look at the worker population ratios right now, and they're falling again. They never recovered after COVID, and now they're falling again. Gentlemen, I just kept. I don't even know if we know what this word recession means anymore. We used to think that, okay, this is recovery, this is recession, and we knew the way the cycles went. After 2020, everything just kind of blew up, and all the macroeconomic data just became illusory or crazy. You can't make sense of it. And I'm not sure we've ever really gone back to a state of recovery since those days. But if we did, these job charts I saw today just seem to have the R word written all over them.
Don't disagree.
Well,
Bobby?
you actually took me in a different direction, but I want to pull at the string a little bit. I think this is the first sign of stagflation we've seen since basically the 70s. And that bothers me more than recession does, because I don't like the interventionist Fed at all, but at least I know when they start hacking away at rates, especially giving the capital spending depreciation that's been allowed in that big, beautiful bill, as he called it. Um, but it always has appeared to me and most other people I know that stagflation is the worst of all possible things, right? It's being like a short, ugly Italian instead of just a short, handsome Italian like we are.
Two of us.
It just seems to be the worst of all possible worlds. And it almost seems like the activity in Iran is spiking the inflation part of stagflation at the worst possible time. So I guess what I'm asking you is, why do you think this timing? There's been a lot of talk about, or Israel said they were going in, and so Trump did. I don't like to look at it as Trump is on Israel's string. I just don't like that conversation. I don't find it to be that credible. I find it to be just what a lot of people want to scream. What do you think before I just keep rambling?
About the timing of this
Yes.
bombing. Um, I think Trump is feeling really flush with a sense of inevitable victory, almost a Napoleonic sense of his personal awesomeness after this Venezuela thing. I think that just infused him with a sense of America's back and I'm leading things. Too often, even from the inauguration, he announced the golden age. Look, it's not the golden age, right? I mean, that's fine. It's not the golden age. People are suffering, uh, and they were suffering at the inauguration. They're suffering even more now. So this is an absurd thing, but maybe he just came to believe it. And bombing Iran, the idea of bombing Iran, my entire political lifetime, there's always been a group out there that wants to bomb Iran. Okay, so and how it is that he decided that he was going to be the first one to do it, I don't know. I have to assume somebody was whispering in his ear, and somebody got to him and profoundly misled him about the nature of Iran, the politics of the place, um, what the neighbors would think, what would happen in the Um, Gulf states, which have been so pro-American all along, are now suddenly being pulled in every direction. Not sure exactly what to do or where to go with it. So I don't know. It's so interesting you asked me that question because I was thinking about this a lot today. I think it's hard for people like us to understand what happens to people when they get a lot of power and develop a sense of their own sort of invulnerability. I mean, you see it a little bit, even on a minor scale, with something like what happened to Kristi Noem, right? I mean, so here we have this governor from South Dakota, who kind of um, stole a lot of valor for the fact that her state never locked down during COVID. And the truth is, she tried to lock down the state, and and her legislature repealed her emergency declarations. They wouldn't
Ooh,
let her do it.
didn't know
So
that.
yeah, that is a weird thing. I said this for years that, oh, she's great because she never locked down her state. And then somebody from South Dakota sent me all the documentation. I've seen all the declarations of emergency and all the lockdown orders from her. The legislature said, "You're out of your mind. We're not gonna do that." And so they repealed them all. So she stole a lot of valor for what her state legislature did. Um, so, so she wasn't really an important figure or whatever, but she became, this big champion of Trump, and importantly, an enemy of DeSantis during the campaign. She was really vocal and hating on DeSantis, right? Which is kind of weird. But anyway, so he thinks she performs well on TV. She's sort of pretty, she articulate, and so he made her head of Department of Homeland Security. And as far as we can tell, she went crazy, right? So suddenly she's cosplaying, uh, uh, ICE agents, and
The
she's
cowboy
on the
hats with the
border.
vest on and all that.
Yeah, it's got all these changes of clothes. It's like living out a childhood fantasy. Uh, and and then acquiring three different charter planes with that she installed, bars and bedrooms in, and firing people left and right for no apparent reason, having blowups of people, and then carrying on a sketchy relationship with her special government employee, the entire time, in plain sight of everybody, and insisting nobody talk about it, and all this went on for the better part of a year. It's actually unbelievable what came out in the hearing the other day. And I was thinking about her and thinking, what goes wrong with the person in their brain when they get that kind of power, that kind of attention? It's like a narcotic or something much worse. Is it possible that Trump might be a victim of this, something similar, having survived multiple assassination attempts, uh, a huge comeback that was implausible after so many people get impeachments and lawfare and all these horrible things, and now the family's richer than ever, and he's on top of the world, sitting on top of an empire that everybody says is in decline. I don't know. I think it might mess up your judgment a little bit.
So
But
so
I tell you what does not pay attention to this kind of stuff is the forces of economics, and that's what we're seeing in operation right now. And they are giving a very big rebuke to the Trump administration. I'm sorry to say.
yeah, no, and I don't disagree with that. Now, I will ask you this: is that because I keep racking my brain for the reasons he's doing and acting the way he is. And if you read Larry McDonald's book, How to Listen When Markets Talk, he had a whole couple chapters about, for decades we had a unipolar world. There was America and there was everything else, and nothing else mattered. We were the circus master. Now we're looking at what's perhaps a multipolar world, with China and Russia being in opposition to us, and China gaining increasing power. Is Trump terrified by that, perhaps, and wants to choke out China, turn it back to a unipolar world? Venezuela and Iran would be key components of that strategy. Could it be that simple, or do you think that's not it?
It's 30% of
Mm,
China's oil in those two
Yeah,
countries.
yeah,
yeah. So under that, in that rendering of things, the Iran is just one theater in a larger struggle
right.
between China and the U.S. Yeah, I suppose that's possible. I think there's probably a lot of things going on that are not shared, uh, on X and in the New York Times, right? So I find it. I don't know how much time you spend in Washington. That is
Little
a
as possible.
weird. It's a weird, weird, weird place. I, I'm always startled because Washington is a town full of tattletales. Like you can't go to any cocktail party where somebody's not whispering in your ear, "Here's what's really going on. Here's what's really happening." And then you meet the guy, "Oh, nobody talks about this, but if you know the truth about this." And so I have to anytime I go, I have to leave because I got, too much stuff in my head. I mean, you just can't believe it. I mean, th- people still call Washington D.C. a town instead of a city for that reason. I mean, there's a valuation that's put on physical proximity because everybody's whispering in everybody's ears.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so strange. You get an earful every time you're there. So anyway, I'm going to be there on Monday and Tuesday. So I'm sure I'm going to get an earful. I don't, but what's true and what's not. And I tell you what, these days it's just a wilderness of mirrors out there.
Bobby, can I ask you a question real quick? Is that
Yeah.
okay? So OPEC, Saudi Arabia has 3.5 to 4 million spare capacity per day that they could put out that could easily counterbalance Iran's output. If it just stays specific to Iran, the oil shock doesn't have to be that big. At $80 a barrel oil, OPEC has incentive to start releasing that. Yes?
Well, the problem is that oil is landlocked, so they have to somehow get it through the strait.
Oh, okay.
If you try to get that oil over land, the price just triples.
Yeah.
So you can't look at that. Number one. Number two, you remember we had Tracy on? She had just been in Saudi Arabia. She said, "I'm not sure they have that capacity anymore."
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and I've heard that from multiple people since Tracy told us that, Jimmy. So it is a problem. They can pump it, but you're already seeing Kuwait, for example, they just stopped producing because they have oil in the bay that cannot get out. And this is a strange thing. I want to ask both of you if you have any insight at all. Um, as soon as I heard that President Trump and Scott Bessent and Chris Wright were going to meet to discuss how they could guarantee ships could get through the strait, the ships don't freaking believe them yet. I mean, regardless of what they said, the ships aren't. I mean,
That's
there's
true.
200 ships stranded there now. It's probably up to
Yeah.
about 240 now.
Well, here's a cockamamie view. We know that Trump always prefers national production over international production. He prefers domestic, keeping everything national rather than global. This country, the U.S., has vast capacity for drilling that is untapped, largely because of Obama years. I mean, I'm from West Texas. I drive through West Texas and see these absurd wind turbines, just everywhere. There are oceans of oil, right underneath the ground. It doesn't make any sense. Is it possible that Trump has a long range plan to just turn the U.S. into an oil state?
Bobby?
Say that again. I was reading a comment.
Well, I mean, the idea is that we have unexploited resources in this country for oil.
Yeah.
And they'll start to drill at a certain price, but they're not going to be drilling at $50. They will drill at $100, right?
Bingo.
So
Yeah.
Okay. So that is actually factual, but crude oil is not fungible. So most of the crude oil, upwards of 80% that we do is light sweet. Best kind of crude oil you can have, but it doesn't cover every need. The reason we're energy independent is we could always trade our crude for crude from Mexico, crude from Canada, crude from the Middle East. You need different types of crude. Jeffrey, I suspect that would be like you having one bow tie and no bow tie stores. So when you look at it from that perspective, we're not really independent. No country actually is. The second part to that is the majority of the problem with crude oil is transport. Even Canadian oil sands, which are one of the more expensive to get out of the ground, cheaper than fracking, but still expensive to get out of the ground, has to travel through pipe. If you put it on trucks or there are not enough train cars out there that are set up, EPA regulations and safety and everything else to take crude oil from point A to point B. And to build one takes 3.5 years and about $10 million. And nobody's willing to do it because of the fluctuations in the price of crude oil, which is what Jeffrey just mentioned in terms of the drillers themselves. So it's an extremely complicated problem. Crude oil at $90, yes, they'll start drilling and they'll hope it doesn't get to 40 by the time they get the barrels out of the ground.
You're talking about a pretty large lag, right?
Absolutely. Huge lag. I remember back when it was fluctuating 2014, 15, I was actually working at a boutique oil firm And we would just laugh every time an analyst on the TMZ of financial media called CNBC would say, well, the price goes up, they'll just turn the spigots on. It's not a faucet.
You can't just turn a
It's
spigot
not a
on.
faucet.
No, that's right.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
here's what I'm going to ask you, Jeffrey. Bobby and I have been disagreeing about this for years, and I'm disagreeing with the market right now too, because I know if you saw 2-year break evens shot up from 2.4 to 2.99, almost 3%, just coinciding with the price of crude. So the world, the market, the Fed thinks that crude at $90 a barrel is highly inflationary. I say in some ways you can make the argument that it's disinflationary because it's taking money out of people's pockets at the pump, people who already can't afford basic groceries because of how much things have gone up. And I think it is a headwind for the economy and could eventually, in fact, Alan Tonelson did some good work on this, The Economist, yesterday, that the Fed tends to not ease or tighten when crude goes up, worried strictly about the inflation, which sets the table for an economic downturn, which means they have to ease the crap out of everything in about a year down the road. What do you think about that, Jeffrey?
I tend to think I tend not to think that higher oil prices are inflationary. I think they're just higher oil prices, and by inflationary I mean uh, uh, a broad class of goods and services going up, mostly for reasons of monetary depreciation.
Amen.
And I think in the case of oil, what you have is a discrete increase in a price,
Yeah.
and that's it. So people pay more for gas, they pay more for all petroleum products, and that's it. But it doesn't have this bleed over into everything else like people tend to think.
It might at
And
$150 a barrel, but not
uh,
at 95, right?
well, but then but you've got elasticities of demand that factor into there. I mean, the people just change their consumption habits if things get
Take
too
the bus.
expensive. So this is actually what was wrong always with Trump's theory that if you could bring down the oil price, you'll bring down inflation generally. And it was unfortunate. I think you remember after the inauguration, uh, very quickly oil prices fell and inflation fell dramatically, like off a cliff within the first 30 days of his administration. And I remember looking at that thinking, I don't understand why this is happening. I mean, maybe the snake finally, digested the golf ball, you know, of 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 $6 trillion in M2, or whatever was created over the previous 3 or 4 years, or it was just luck. I don't know, but I don't think it was just because that the falling oil price dragged all prices down. I just don't believe that, and I don't believe that rising gas prices and oil prices are going to drive up inflation generally. That said, where are we on inflation? This is something I don't really know. I tend to follow uh, Trueflation numbers, right? These are the real time indexes that are gathered through all sorts of fancy algorithms, right? And so today we're at annualized 1.07%, and that's not. Yeah, I'd like it to be zero. I'd like it to be negative, but that's not the end of the world. But M2 is rising again, um,
As is the
and
Fed's balance sheet. Yeah.
as is the Fed's balance sheet, which is what I was about to say. The
Oh, I'm
reason
so
it's
sorry,
rising.
Jeffrey. I apologize.
No, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. This is the question. The next question: why? Well, the answer is Congress, right? I mean, the debt is rising so fast. It's just out of control, and the Fed's become the buyer of first resort to keep the bond market in check. So, and that's what's driving them too, as far as I can tell. Now, you're looking at a 12 to 18-month lag between a renewed, in effect, a renewed QE and its consequences. And I've said this for a few years now. My number one biggest worry is that we're going to repeat the experience of the 1970s with three clean waves, each followed by the end of one inflation, the lowering of interest rates, kicking off a second round, the end of that, with the increase of interest rates, followed by a lowering of interest rates. And then we had the great third wave that fundamentally changed life in America, between 1978 and 1981. So, are we going to do that again? I certainly hope not, but I'm not sure how long the Fed's memory is. This is my problem.
By the way, I
So
don't think that Paul Volcker deserves as much credit as he gets. I think the emergent technology of the internet in the early to mid 80s was way more disinflationary than people give it credit for. And I think it belongs in the conversation. It never is, as do I think that AI should be in the conversation about its potential disinflationary effects as well. Bobby, I didn't mean to steal your question. You go.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, yeah,
on
yeah.
AI, this is what I was looking to again, that all the tables on B1 on that release today. I just don't see AI as driving this. Yeah, okay,
yet.
professional services, but I, people say, "Oh, well, AI is taking people's jobs." There's the job losses that we saw in that report today are not being replaced by AI. This is just tight times for business.
I wanted to throw a couple things out there, Jeffrey, if we could, because
Yeah.
we have really loyal viewers, and Widge is in here making comments. And one of the ones he said was, "I'm all baseball cap all the time." Upsetting, Widge, but you're younger than us, so that's okay. Second thing he said is, people may not be aware that Nimrod was a great and powerful leader. Totally agree that this is very much like March 2020. And then he said Napoleonic, agree. So nothing anybody has to answer. But Jonathan Barnett, Jimmy, you know him. He's our resident viewer who's also
Like him.
apparently a pizza expert. He's putting up that clip that, Jeffrey, I'm sure you saw, of Trump some 40 years ago saying, "I would bomb the crap out of Iran. I'd bomb the hell out of them." And he thinks that it gives him leverage with Xi Jinping on the rare earth story. Now, you had mentioned earlier how much this administration likes to control where they get things from. I have a small anecdote, very small. I know someone who is a part owner of a tungsten mine in California, and through some, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, I got one of their representatives to the White House, to somebody who could get to the White House. And he basically said, "Nope, it's in California. Trump doesn't want to do anything there." So he's like, he doesn't want to help Newsom. So I don't know how factual that is. That could have just been this person blowing me off or assuming they spoke for Trump. But before we get on to other things, because you wrote some great stuff lately that I want to go over, how much do you agree with the Xi part and with the Trump controlling it, as you mentioned earlier?
I don't know. I write for the Epoch Times every day, which
Which is the only reason I have a subscription, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Well, this paper famous for its sort of inveighing against the CCP all the time. So the reporters there tend to look at, there's a culture at Epoch where they look at everything through what's bad for China, we're in favor, what's good for China, we're against, this sort of thing. That's maybe a caricature. But anyway, they have a China lens on things. So I've heard this a number of times that what's really going on in Iran is actually an attempt to restrain and contain China and its imperial ambitions and economic aspirations. And so I know the story. I don't know. This seems almost too clever to me. A lot of times, what I've noticed with the Trump administration is just sometimes cray things happen. It's not 4D chess. It's not. It's not very clever. It's just kind of
And
lurching.
the same
from
with that
different
comment
things
from
to do.
46 years ago. Trump sometimes is flippant. The fact that he said that, and Jonathan, I love that. That's a great contribution to the show. But the fact that he said it 40 years ago means less than nothing to me. Trump says a lot of things, and sometimes
Yeah, and I'll
it's
tell
crazy.
you something else. There was one thing that there was absolute promise going into this. It's true in 2016, and it's true in 2024 that he ran on a platform against regime change and nation building abroad, and taking care of the people at home. We're not going to go to a war with Iran. We're going to negotiate deals with the world. He's the peace candidate. It was over and over and over and over again. And I don't care how, and MAGA is out on full force right now on X, denouncing anybody who, questions anything that Trump is doing. But I tell you what, it's not good. It's not good for the base. Trump is losing support. The midterms, the betting odds of the midterms are getting worse and worse and worse. There are people who have a strong interest in this that are just telling me, forget about the midterms. We've lost them. We've lost the House and the Senate. If this is true, that's really bad for Trump. He's going to be impeached. There's going to be an impeachment of the day. But
Yeah.
right, it's going to be crazy, and all of his appointees are going to be dragged before Senate committees on an ongoing basis. RFK might as well just be in the Senate every day for 2 years. Actually, he should probably just resign, because it's hopeless for all my friends in public health. They will not stand a chance, and big pharma is going to come roaring back. A loss in the midterms will be catastrophic for the entire Trump agenda, and then we'll
Do you
just
believe
face
that's what's going to happen? A loss in the midterms? Was that where your money is?
as of today.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Right.
Unless something changes. I mean, we could get people are now counting on the Save Act or whatever. Oh, we're going to get rid of voter fraud, and there's going to be Republicans. Listen. As of today, it looks like catastrophe, and if this Iran thing is not cleaned up quickly, and people say this to me all the time. Oh, don't worry, it's going to. But they said the same thing about Iraq. They said the same thing about Afghanistan. We've seen this again. Nobody knows how long this is going to last and how far it's going to swirl out of control. I've done a deep study of World War I. This is kind of how it began. It's the big assassination, diplomatic maneuvers, some small wars, people come joining other states
battle lines, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. It doesn't. This much I will say: I do not believe that anything that's happening right now was intended to happen when they first started this bombing. What was it, like a week, 10 days ago?
A half ago. Yeah, right. 10 days.
Yeah, it is not going the way the Trump administration expected. They can pretend. They can be like Pee-wee on the bicycle where he falls off and it says, "I meant to do that." All right, I can tell you the Trump administration did not intend for the world to look today as it looks. And you've got Peter Hegseth, holding out the possibility of what they call boots on the ground or whatever. I mean, this was not part of the plan. So things are already off the rails.
More than anything, I wish they would stop with the theater. When Pete had said that, after they sunk the ship Soleimani, it's like apparently POTUS got him again. Like, just stop.
Yeah.
Like, this is a serious thing. Anyway, Jeffrey, there's a question from our friend and a very active viewer, Tim McLean. He says, does Jeffrey think our friends in the Middle East will still honor their commitments to invest $3 trillion in the U.S.?
Oh, I don't even know what these commitments are about. I mean, Trump will take any kind of phone blather and immediately go to the media and say, "Look, I just got another $1 billion of investment or whatever." And I don't know how serious these things are. I don't know. I will say this: that Trump's trade stuff. God, I feel like I'm like the bearer of bad news today. But did you see the manufacturing? I mean, the manufacturing jobs are falling. This was not supposed to happen. The trade deficit is rising. Okay, so fewer manufacturing jobs, rising trade deficits after tariffs that are higher than they've ever been in a century is not exactly what was supposed to happen. I'm telling you, this is not going well. It's not going well on any front for the Trump administration right now. The tariffs were a signature policy of this guy, right? And I was always doubtful. I never doubted there was a trade problem, but I just didn't think that tariffs were going to be the way that we're going to solve it. We would have solved it through lower business costs, doing something about the value of the dollar on international markets. There's a lot of things, deregulation, which Trump's been more or less okay at. But there are ways to deal with the problem with the American manufacturing. But just tariffing everybody was an experiment that has not really worked.
I have to tell you, Jim and I have been accused of being MAGA and being Trumpers for the last 3 years or so, just because we thought he was the better choice over Kamala Harris. And I still think that. But one of the pieces of evidence somebody used against me once was that I had a subscription to the Epoch Times. Just, oh, there you go. It's more proof.
You're MAGA.
Proof right there. Like, it's a newspaper. Just
you know, I think they strive to be as objective as possible. You know, they try to
I do
just
too.
to report the news.
Well, objectivity looks like right wing right now. I mean, that's the part that's
That's a
crazy
great
to me.
line, Jim.
Like I always say to
I know.
people, you call me a right wing extremist. Just tell me one policy that I favor that's right wing. Just one, because there really is none. I don't even understand what right and left is anymore. Which, by the way, Jeffrey, please don't answer this question. I think you will answer this question. I don't think it's bad, but again, we're trying to be hard hitting journalists here. Bobby and I both said we're disappointed with a lot of what's going on with Trump. Again, people say, well, he ran on peace in the Middle East. He ran on this, he ran on that. I didn't even care what he was running on. I was far more focused on what I thought was the debt bomb, the spending policies, and the overall nonsense of the other candidate. I voted against a candidate, not for a candidate. I'm not
Sure.
proud of that, and it's just the way it is. If the election were being held tomorrow between those two candidates, how would you lean? And again, I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot. If you don't want to answer,
You mean retroactively, retrospectively?
Tomorrow the elections between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris again, and you have to make a choice knowing everything you know now. What would you do?
So I think Kamala Harris and that fake guy named Biden or something like that represented like this dystopian, like the
Weird.
worst surveillance state, dystopia, vaccine passport, censorship. I think they would have shut down the internet. In fact, I don't think we'd be having this podcast if she had gotten elected. I mean,
I agree.
that's
And I don't think that's hyperbole, by the way. I think they
No.
genuinely were angling for that. Yeah.
It was very close. And this administration, the Biden administration, released in 2021 a document that you could probably still pull it up. It's called Declaration on the Future of the Internet. Guess what? They didn't believe was part of the internet, free speech. Right? There's no. I was fully expecting my domains to be confiscated if he had won that election. So, look, you know, there's bad and there's worse. And what I saw emerging in that Biden world was an unimaginable dystopia of like totalitarian control.
100%. Yes.
So,
Bobby?
Jeffrey, on February 24th, by the way, I'm distracted here watching Cenk Uygur call Trump a con man. It's like LeBron James calling Michael Jordan a basketball player. Your article on the 24th of February called "Has Life Really Improved in a Half a Century?" I'm not going to read the whole thing, but your first line was, "Help me work through an economic puzzle I have in my mind. It stems from my childhood." The reason that article struck me so much, and Jim, I've talked to you about this on the side. I've talked to my family members about this. I do a lot of "we had it all" thinking. Yeah, I'm going to be 60 years old in September. Jim's a half year older than me, and I remember drinking from the hose and riding my bike. You know, having to come back when the street lights came on. Mom cooking dinner and all that. And then my father did start a business, and my mom went to work. But my father's entire goal was to get my mother back home. That was the first thing that was going to happen as the business progressed. I was reading that article and I was thinking to myself, because I'd been thinking this already, one of the things that strikes me about today versus then is we have way more stuff. People who consider themselves to be in poverty and people that are below the poverty line are walking around with iPhones and they have Netflix subscriptions and all these things. And all we did was watch Charlie's Angels together. You know, we just got together. That's the only one I wanted to watch, shockingly. But now it's like, I look at my brother-in-law and my sister who have 3 kids, still live at home, 2 in the 20s. Each kid has a TV. Each kid has their own Netflix. Each kid has their own phone. Each kid has their own car. And one of our regular viewers, Widge, is come after me on this on a personal level and saying to me, no, people really do have it hard. And I'm not saying they don't, but how much of it is this dramatic increase in wants and needs, wants that have become needs in generations younger than us?
Well, it's a lot of illusion. Most of what people buy is just they're buying things that they think it's going to bring them happiness, but their happiness is not what they're consuming or not consuming. That happiness is related to the well-being of the home, the intactness of the family, the orderliness of things, and that all that, and the prospects for the future, right? I mean, I just never when I was a kid, never worried about my future. You know, do you know that I graduated from college and thought, I wonder what I should do now?
Same. Right. Yeah. Right.
So I went to Washington, went to a journalism program, whatever. But I didn't even know. I graduated. I didn't even know what. For that matter, I left high school. I walked out of my high school because I got pissed at something, and walked down to the administration and I said, I got to get the hell out of here. And the lady said, "Well, you've got enough credits to graduate." And I said, let me sign." So I just signed it. I didn't even know what I was going to do. Then I got in my car. I drove to the local university and enrolled, and paid for my entire school from my job. So I was like, this world is unimaginable now. Like I, I mean, people spend 6 months unemployed, sending out thousands of resumes. They still can't get a job because they don't actually have any skills. They don't have any friends. They don't have a network. They don't have anything. It's a disaster. I'm really proud of that article, by the way.
It's
I
a
worked
great
really
article.
hard on it. Yeah, and I got criticized by some pedantic uh, university economists for claiming that for everybody in general, according to my figures, which I was looking at the effective wage per hour of work of the household, which is a different way of looking at things, right? But I said, under the following conditions, uh, your standard of living may have declined over the last 50 years by 50%, right? That was my figure. Now, what I meant by that was, of course, households under which this scenario applies, where you go from one income to two, and once you figure the inflation and the effective wage per unit of work per household, when those conditions apply, your standard of living has fallen 40 or 50%. The reason I named the 80s as the turning point is because it became more, so just to be clear, became more typical than not for a household to have two full-time incomes. Okay, that more typical than not. The turning point was 1985. So that's the basis of those figures. So anyway, I stand by the article despite these pedants online. I didn't even answer them.
Bobby, do we have to wrap it, or can we go?
Well,
a
let me
little
just
more?
one
No,
last
please. I
comment.
want to go for an hour. I don't think
Well,
Sterling
now,
can.
let me just tell you one more thing, and yeah, I got to head out too. But
Yeah.
after I finished that article, I thought, we have artificial intelligence now. I can find out things I didn't know before. I sometimes forget. So I asked, I put in my region what my father's job title was, and he worked for the public school system as an assistant principal. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that AI knows, right? And AI spent back. Well, it's very lucky your father earned $14,500 per year.
That was going to be my guess. I was going to say 14,000. I swear to God, that's what I had in my
And
head. Yeah.
with that, we had 2 cars, a house in a nice neighborhood, 2 kids, and my mom handled everything else. We spent the weekends together. Summer vacations, good life. So I ran, just run that up against CPI, and what that is today is about 100 and I don't remember, 110,000, something like that. Okay, so which is not an entirely shabby. Like only a few years ago, you used to say, "Wow, he has a 6-figure salary," and that was supposed to be impressive. Now nobody cares. But I mean, on $110,000, would you with very young children, would you own a home, 2 cars, in a nice neighborhood, safe streets, and with
I don't think I could.
one income? I don't think that life is possible.
Me
I
neither.
don't think so.
Yeah, that's interesting. I
But
remember
again, one
filling
of the
out.
things that strikes me about this conversation, Jeffrey, and what struck me about that is I was talking to my nephew and he goes, "I can't get a place on my own." And I said, "Well, let me ask you, how much are you short?" He said, "Like at least 300 a month, if not more." I said, "Okay, how many streaming services do you have?" 4. Right? What kind of car do you drive? A 2021 Camaro. Okay.
On leverage.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
on
Yeah.
leverage. And,
So
and I just started hacking away. I said, well,
Bobby,
look, I've come
I'm
up with 500 here already.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So this is not all bad guys in Washington steal your money. The culture
Some
is
of it is, right?
Some of it is, but some of it is people's bad choices. I am shocked at what people spend on groceries. How stupid can you be? There's a Whole Foods downtown. That place is crowded all the. Do these people have any idea how much they're paying for the groceries at this Whole Foods? That's like twice as expensive, 3 times as much as the ethnic grocery store across town, where you can get vegetables virtually for free. All right. I know meat markets, small meat markets, where they're practically giving their food away. For
Yeah.
that matter, buy a friggin' Costco membership. I don't know what's wrong with people.
I know.
The way they're spending, there's streaming services, uh, uh, eating out. Are you out of your mind? Like, if
Yeah,
you're
his
short on money,
DoorDash bill, by the way, was about $360 a month.
okay, so uh, God, where are the violins to play? This is pathetic. This is a kind of nihilism, that's swept the country, where people just um, their spending is completely out of control. They have no idea. DoorDash. I have a friend of mine who says, yeah, he can't believe it, but I have never, ever, ever one time had food delivered to my house. Not once.
Neither. Well,
Sorry.
Pizza. That's it, right?
Well, I go and pick it up. I don't know. It's like I thump
No,
something
I don't.
wrong
I've
with
never
my
had
brain.
anything
I
but
don't-
pizza delivered.
I don't
Yeah,
think-
right. Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but the way people spend,
Staggering.
so here's the thing. When I got in college, I was short of money. Okay, I had 1.5 jobs, a full-time job, and I had a half job in a dance band. I played on the weekends to pay for my school and my apartment. Okay, yeah, it worked. I don't know how,
Yeah, I love
but
it. Yeah.
but in those days, this is before we had like spreadsheets and the internet or whatever. I would this is how I trained myself. I would mark down every penny I spent. I mean, all the way down to, like, if I bought a pack of cigarettes, I'd put it down to the penny. A pack of gum, put it down to the penny. Every grocery, and I would watch the relationship between what I spent and what I consumed. And I did this for the better part of 2 years. And I learned how to bake bread, and I would barter for my dry cleaning, barter for my oil changes by giving away bread. This is the way we lived. So I had to scrape by, but I did well. But I trained myself to be frugal. You have a whole generation raised under ZERP, right, and under leverage, and especially after COVID, there was this time. Uh, I may have told you about this already, but it was like 2021. I was in DC at a hotel, and the place was practically empty. Anyway, the waitress came by and we were just talking. I said, "Yeah, it's a hell of a thing, these lockdowns and everything else." She goes, "Well, look, I'm doing just fine. The government just pours money into my bank account. I don't even need it. I don't even want it. I'm living on a trust fund. They're just," and she said, "The thing that I've learned, all money, it's all fake. It's like that scene in Margin Call. They just make it up." And she said this to me, and she's like this Gen Z 20 something, you know. And I thought, God damn it, is this the lesson this generation has learned? Right?
And
And
she's
if
about
and if
25% right. That's the bad part. Right?
but if that's what you think, you'll never be able to restrain your spending. You'll
Crazy,
never
crazy.
be able to get hold of anything. And so
Jeffrey, I could talk to
you're
you.
right.
I could talk to you all day, but our producers
Okay.
got hard outs at about an
Yeah,
hour.
yeah, but I gotta head out too.
No, this has been fantastic. Jeffrey Tucker. I just almost said Jeffrey Epstein. Sorry about that. He's just been in the news all the time. I apologize.
Jesus.
When this goes live, we'll take that out. Jeffrey Tucker, who is the president of the Brownstone Institute and a hell of a good guy and an amazingly logical thinker. Thank you so much for being here. This has been the Future's Edge special. Thanks to our sponsors, Independence Arc Farms. Try it. You won't be sorry. American Gold Exchange. And most importantly, unfilteredinvestor.com. This has been the Future's Edge. Thank you guys for joining.